You never made a single decision in your life, not one. Every choice you think you made, what to eat this morning, who to love, what to believe, it was decided before you were aware of it, and physics can prove it. I'm Leonard Susskind, and I want to tell you something that makes most people deeply uncomfortable, something that neuroscientists have known for decades, something that physicists have understood even longer, but something that nobody really wants to say out loud. Free will is an illusion, not a partial illusion, not a philosophical technicality, a complete fundamental physics level illusion. And once you understand why, you will never see yourself the same way again. Let me start with what you think you know. You believe you're making choices right now. You believe that when you decided to watch this video, something inside you, some essential you, weighed the options and chose freely. You believe that tomorrow morning you could do something completely different from what physics predicts. You believe in a self that sits behind your eyes, pulling levers, making decisions, authoring your life. That belief is the illusion, and it runs deeper than you think. Let's start with the physics. The universe at its most fundamental level obeys laws, precise mathematical, unbreakable laws. Newton showed us that a universe of particles following deterministic laws has exactly one possible future. Given any initial state, if you know the position and momentum of every particle in the universe at any moment, you can calculate everything that will ever happen, every thought, every decision, every word you will ever speak, already determined, already fixed, already inevitable. This is classical determinism, and most people think quantum mechanics saved us from it. They think the randomness of quantum events, the uncertainty principle, the probabilistic nature of wave functions' collapse, creates space for free will, a gap in the determinism where choice can enter. But this is wrong. And it's wrong in a way that makes the situation worse, not better. Quantum randomness doesn't give you free will, it gives you dice. If your decisions are determined by quantum random events in your neurons, you're not free. You're just unpredictable. There's a profound difference between freedom and randomness. A decision made by a random quantum fluctuation in your brain is not your decision any more than a decision made by a deterministic physical process is your decision. Either way, you're not the author. The universe is. But let me go deeper, because the most disturbing argument against free will doesn't come from physics. It comes from neuroscience. In 1983, a neuroscientist named Benjamin Libet performed an experiment that should have changed everything. He asked subjects to flex their wrist whenever they felt like it, and to note the position of a clock hand at the moment they felt the urge to move. Meanwhile, he measured the electrical activity in their brains. What he found was extraordinary. The brain showed electrical activity preparing for the movement, what he called the readiness potential, up to 550 milliseconds before the subjects reported feeling the urge to move. Half a second before you're aware of deciding to do something, your brain has already started doing it. The decision happened before you knew about it. You didn't make the choice. Your brain made it, and then it told you about it. And you called that telling the experience of deciding. Think about what that means. The feeling of making a decision, that sense of weighing options and choosing, that might be nothing more than your conscious mind being informed of what your brain already decided to do. You're not the driver. You're a passenger who thinks they're driving because they can see the road. Now, some people push back on Libet. They say the experiment has been challenged, refined, reinterpreted, and that's true. But the basic finding that neural activity precedes conscious awareness of intention has been replicated many times in many forms. The gap between when your brain acts and when you become aware of it is real. And it's not small, it's hundreds of milliseconds. In brain terms, that's an eternity. So where does this leave us? If determinism is true, your choices are fixed by prior causes. If quantum randomness is true, your choices are fixed by random fluctuations. If neuroscience is right, your choices are made before you're aware of them. In none of these pictures is there room for the kind of free will most people believe in, the kind where you, some essential autonomous you, freely author your decisions from outside the causal chain of the universe. That kind of free will doesn't appear anywhere in the physics, anywhere in the neuroscience, anywhere in the mathematics. But here's where it gets philosophically strange, because most physicists and philosophers who accept that free will is an illusion don't think this means nothing matters. They don't think it means you should stop deliberating, stop trying, stop caring about your choices. And this seems paradoxical. If your choices are already determined, why deliberate at all? The answer is subtle and important. Your deliberation is part of the causal chain. The process of thinking through a decision, weighing options, considering consequences, that process is itself a physical process in your brain, and it's part of what determines the outcome. The fact that the outcome is determined doesn't mean the deliberation is irrelevant. It means the deliberation is the mechanism by which the determination happens. Think of it like a calculator. When you input numbers and press equals, the output is completely determined by the laws of arithmetic. There's no freedom in the calculation, but the calculation still matters. The process still does something real. Your deliberation is like that, determined, but real, causally effective, necessary. But let me tell you what I find most interesting about all of this. The question of whether free will exists depends entirely on how you define it. And most people have never actually examined their definition. There's a version of free will called libertarian free will. The idea that you have genuine causal power that is not reducible to prior physical causes, that some part of you stands outside the deterministic chain and makes genuine choices, that version is almost certainly an illusion. Physics leaves no room for it. But there's another version called compatibilist free will, the idea that freedom means acting according to your own desires, values, and reasoning without external coercion. That you are free when your actions flow from who you are rather than from someone forcing you. And this version is compatible with determinism. In fact, it requires determinism. You are only free in this sense if your actions reliably reflect your values, if you're free from external constraint, if your deliberation genuinely influences your behavior. And all of that can be true even in a deterministic universe. So here's the strange conclusion. The free will you thought you had, the libertarian kind, the kind where you stand outside causality and author your life, that's an illusion. But the free will that actually matters for how you live your life, for moral responsibility, for the difference between coercion and choice, for the experience of being an agent in the world, that might be real in a deeper sense than you realized, not because you escaped physics, but because you are physics. You are the universe making decisions through the particular configuration of matter and energy that is you. Your choices are the universe's choices expressed through your specific causal structure. Your values, your reasoning, your desires, they're not separate from the physical world. They are physical processes, real ones, causally powerful ones. The illusion is the separation, the idea that you are something other than physics, something that stands apart from the causal web of the universe and pulls its own strings. You're not apart from the universe, you're a part of it, a deeply complex, self-reflective, deliberating part. And when this part of the universe deliberates and chooses, something real is happening. Not free in the libertarian sense, but not meaningless either. Here's what I keep coming back to after 50 years of thinking about these questions. The question isn't whether free will exists in some absolute metaphysical sense. The question is what kind of thing you are. And the answer physics gives us is extraordinary. You are a configuration of quantum fields that became complex enough to model itself, to represent its own future states, to simulate outcomes before they happen, to care about consequences. that capacity for self-modeling, for caring, for representing futures and choosing between them, that's real. That emerged from physics. That is physics doing something it has never done before in the history of the universe, as far as we know. Maybe that's not free will in the traditional sense. Maybe it's something stranger and more interesting, a universe that became complex enough to ask whether it's free. And the fact that you're asking that question right now, that you're uncertain, that you care about the answer, that uncertainty and that caring are themselves physical processes in the most complex object we know of in the universe, your brain. So, are you free? I don't think you're free the way you thought you were, but I think you're something far more interesting than a puppet. You're the universe's way of deliberating about itself. And that might be the only kind of freedom that was ever on offer. The question is whether that's enough. And I suspect the answer depends entirely on what you decide to do with it.